My wealthy dad died, leaving everything to my older sister. Here's how I feel about that. Oh yeah, and wait. There's also a story included from the perspective of my older sister, and she has this to say. My dad had a marriage before the one to my mother. It was only for a couple of years, but they had one child, my older sister, who we'll call OS. My mom was her babysitter and ended up marrying my dad when older sister was 5. I was born 9 years later, and then my younger sister, YS, was born 2 years after that. After younger sister was born, my mom decided she did not give two shits about older sister, and that older sister was, quote, taking resources from younger sister and I. I'm not trying to defend her, just giving context. She basically prevented our dad from paying for older sister to go to college, or helping older sister financially in any way, along with pretty badly abusing older sister while dad was away on business trips. Older sister's now in her late 30s, I'm in my late 20s, and younger sister's in her mid-20s. Our dad passed away from a heart failure a few weeks ago, and all hell has broken loose. Apparently, some time ago, my dad convinced my mom to divorce him for, quote, tax reasons. My mom's not good with money and was paying her a chunk of change in alimony every month while they still lived together. So the will has nothing to do with her except for one small house he owned in the middle of nowhere. Younger sister and I both given trust funds that pay out a monthly stipend and can be used for certain expenses like weddings, medical bills, grad school, etc. Everything else, the business, the money, all the houses, everything, was left to older sister. This doesn't really bug me as I was not interested in taking up the quote family business and have a decent career in my own. But my mother apparently does not have a savings or retirement fund of any kind, and hasn't worked since she babysat older sister ages ago. She did not finish high school, she dropped out to marry my dad when she turned 18. I tried approaching older sister to talk to her about giving something to my mom, so she doesn't have to work. But she's pretty firm on making sure that my mom gets nothing. I tried going from the angle that our dad was kind of a predator. He was never faithful to my mom either, and my mom did not know any better. But older sister is out of the opinion that being destitute to her is, quote, just dessert for the crap my mom put her through. I tried to see if maybe mom could contest the will on the grounds of them having a common law marriage, as no one knew they were divorced except them as far as I knew. But my state apparently did away with common law marriage in the 1920s. Older sister's the executor of the estate, and it's in probate right now. I think that's the right terminology, sorry I'm not a lawyer. But I gave a copy of the will to my friend's dad who is, and he'd said he'd take a gander look over the weekend. Here's my questions. Number 1. Can the trust I was given be used to help my mother instead of me? Number 2. Is there some kind of loophole where we can still get some money from older sister to make sure mom doesn't have to work? I know she should probably get a job, but she has no experience and is over 50. Number 3. If we can't get money from older sister, the estate, or my trust, I'm required to provide my mother with care if she refuses to get a job. I'm hoping to get some answers to these sort of second opinion questions, alongside friends' dad's opinion, so I know if I need to be setting aside money for an attorney to fight hard for my mom or just kind of distance myself. Hey guys, Mr. Reddito here. This story has 3 updates. We're about to hop into the first update now. I hope everyone's enjoying, so let's get right to it. I made a post about this last year. My wealthy dad passed away and left almost everything to my older sister. Through some legal shenanigans, and he managed to disinherit my mom, though they've been secretly divorced for a decade, only leaving her with a house in the boonies and no income. My mom ended up being forced to get a job, but she had no real skills or college education. She dropped out of high school to marry my dad as she turned 18 and was a stay-at-home mom. She started working at a movie theater to help pay bills, but was constantly guilt-tripping my younger sister. And I, well, because we got trust funds. But she could not afford to live in the style she was accustomed to. Frankly, it got on my nerves because the trust fund only pays for certain things, and my mom's expenses aren't one of them. Anyways, when coronavirus hit, my mom lost her job. She's been hounding my little sister and I to pay her bills or let her move in with us. She's refusing to go on unemployment because, quote, she's better than that. But over the years plus since Dad's death, I've been going to therapy and starting to really come to understand that my mom is just a shitty person. She was abusive to my older sister and expects everyone in the family to worship the ground she walks on. I haven't given my mom any money yet. My younger sister has, though. When I talked to my therapist about it, she said that my mom is not entitled to my income from my regular job, and there are resources out there for my mother. Further, letting my mom move in may endanger my relationship I've been building with my older sister. A relationship that was sabotaged by mother a lot when we grew up. But at the same time, she is my mother, and I don't know if I would be a huge a-hole for basically telling her to look elsewhere for a handout. Especially when I know my younger sister will just cave. I feel guilty about the way this will impact my sister. But at the same time, I've told her mom isn't entitled to her time or money either. The verdict was not the a-hole. Hey guys, Mr. Reddito here again. So the next part of this update is a very interesting one. We're going to see a story from the older sister's point of view. I found it on the thread, so we're going to look at that now. The older sister's point of view was titled, "My Father Has Passed Away." Hello all. Enough time has passed that I think it's safe to post about this. A few of you guessed correctly that a post in another subreddit, outside the Just Know network, was about recent developments in my family situation, regarding my father and stepmother. I ask that those of you who have figured it out, or do figure it out in the future, to not draw attention to it by linking it here for others. I know people like juicy gossip, but I do not trust the poster of any post, especially my younger sibling, to not bandy about some other personal things that have been posted here. Let's give a quick cast of characters. Me, obviously, older sister. In Dad, who is my dad who had me when he was 16, raging narcissistic and likes to play people off each other. When he passed away, we were low contact. JY Aunt, my dad's older sister, very low contact with most our family except me. Crypt Keeper, my stepmother who was 14 years older than me, was my babysitter when I was a toddler. JM Mom, my just maybe mom. She's usually okay, but has some just no tendencies and pulled some shit in the past. So I tend to be loving yet distant to her. She was 17 when I was born. JN Bro, my only full sibling, younger by a year-ish. He's the spitting image of our father, both in looks and atrocious personality. Esis, my much younger half-sister, Crypt Keeper's only bio kid. Cool when alone, but enables the duck out of everyone. More fleas than a pack of coyotes. Over 20 years ago, when I was very dramatic tween in the 90s, and the Crypt Keeper's abuse of me ramped up, I stormed into my father's office to demand he, quote, do something about her. I railed at him about the blatant favoritism, the fact that I did 90% of the house cleaning, everything. And once my little tween hard hand ranted and railed and cried itself out, he told me he wasn't going to do anything about it. He would not stop me from doing what I, quote, had to do to protect myself, but he wasn't going to be leaving the Crypt Keeper. I remember stomping my foot and saying, fine, choose her in life, but choose me in death. In the way dramatic tweens will, since everything in life and death. And I stormed out of his office. For years, that memory's been nothing to me more than cringy example of my preteen overdramatics, until a few months ago. I received a call from my JY aunt. unexpectedly, that my father passed away in his sleep. He'd always been overweight and suffered from heart issues, to the point he had a defibrillator in the end table of the side of his bed. I thanked her for her condolences and asked when the service would be. She said she did not know, but my father's attorney had made it clear that he needed me to contact him immediately, and gave my aunt his contact information to pass to me. I called the attorney while I was in a Lyft on my way home from work, and let me tell you, he had a bombshell. My father had died and left pretty much everything to me. I remember asking him, "What about Crypt Keeper?" And the attorney said they've been divorced for 10 years. Y'all, my father had apparently convinced Crypt Keeper to divorce him for tax reasons a little over a decade ago, which meant she was not entitled to anything in the estate. The state they lived in does not recognize common law marriages. He's been paying her alimony for 10 years and she's been using it as fun money. Outside of 2 small trusts he'd left for my younger sister, to pay for various life expenses and monthly stipend, and a small shack in the middle of nowhere for the Crypt Keeper. I inherited everything else. Here's a side note though. What is it with members of my family and only being generous to family in need when they die? Ducking idiots. The attorney apparently needs me to come sign a lot of paperwork. So I got some time off from my day job, flew out for a week, signed paperwork, used some insurance money to pay for an appropriate funeral, and had a lovely luncheon at his favorite restaurant. Then I flew home to wait for the probate to finish. That's when he calls. Jay and Bro and Isis began. See, for years, the Crypt Keeper had assumed that my dad was leaving her everything in the will. She's gotten very comfortable. She was very shocked when I had my I should say now my attorney, informing her that per the will, the house she was living in wasn't hers but the property of the estate, and she should prepare to move. When she tried to say, quote, "But I'm his wife," he reminded her she has not been the wife for 10 years. She's gotten an attorney to look at the paperwork, and from what I've heard, she basically told her there wasn't anything she could do. She had received her, quote, share of the assets in the divorce. She had a generous alimony for a decade, and he'd left her a house. No court in the land would say that she was forgotten in the will, and his ex-wife, she's not entitled to anything. Well, let me just tell you, that did not sit well with Crypt Keeper. She hasn't had work since the Berlin Wall fell. She hasn't had a real job ever, as babysitting me has been, quote, under the table. She was getting a small house but no money. She realized she'd have to get a job or get money from me. I, of course, don't answer a call that is known from her. So she sang sob stories to my siblings, telling them that if she could not support herself, they'd have to foot the bill. So, sure enough, they both began calling me constantly, telling me when probate was finished, I had to give some money to Crypt Keeper. She never worked. I could not expect her to start now. After a couple months of this, I informed them that I would not hear them on the subject again. If they brought it up, I'd hang up or leave or block them as necessary. Then probate ended. I paid a lot in taxes and became a lot wealthier. The day the house Crypt Keeper lived in was officially mine. I had her served with an eviction notice. She was to be gone within 30 days, and thankfully someone had convinced her to not wreck the house. Probably told her I could, and probably would, go after her for damages. I don't care. I had a professional service go in and deep clean it. Then, just to be a jerk, I gave the house to my mom, whom the Crypt Keeper hated for being the first woman my dad had, quote, loved. Last I heard, Isis had held Crypt Keeper get a job at the Golden Arches. I admit I feel a certain amount of malicious glee at the idea of her being subject to the same indignities I suffered as a child, because she could not stand the idea that any woman would be important to my father other than her. Though I do feel bad for her co-workers. I know that woman is a monster and would not wish her on my worst enemy. As for me, for those of you who follow my post, FMIL is being medicated and has mellowed out. After her diagnosis, a lot more care has gone into helping her enjoy the time she has left. And I've done my best to swallow my anger now that we know about her illness. FH and I got a prenup, don't worry fam, I'm not a total idiot, and are running off to Vegas to get married this summer. We're also looking into getting a house and a lot of land since I can now unexpectedly live my dream of being a kitchen witch whose biggest concerns are making sure her garden's doing well, and I make jams and jellies of fresh, homegrown fruits for her loved ones. Future husband's also hopeful that he will be Dr. Quiet by the end of the year, and it's looking like that'll be the case. I thought this was really cool perspective, how we could see from both sides of the sisters, and I don't know, let me know what you guys thought of this. Whose side are you more willing to go with? OP of the first story or older sister? Drop your thoughts down below, your comments, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and remember guys, if you're not subscribed to my second channel, you're missing out on daily videos. Just so you know, I'll pop that up on screen right now, so go click subscribe and you can have even more of your daily dose of Mr. Reddito. Okay guys, have a wonderful day and I'll see you on the other channel.